strikes the chin. First offense there.
What are you going to do now? Oh, get a load of those shoes. Good morning, Jason. I love the purple notebook. I love that. It makes me happy. Good things. Yeah, I was gonna say. Oh, come on, elementary and junior high. I've noticed. But sometimes I'll ask you questions, go reaching in this pile, and pull out just
It's not all
Oh, okay, good.
Jason's like,
Oh, man. I thought offices were all good.
No, I didn't know until the
Office before
I didn't know. I was so happy. Last night, I had to reach out. All right. Yeah, right. Leave me your privacy. I think it's
it doesn't help me pull me away from anything. It actually is more stress. So I don't do what I need to do. I sit here and have fun, so I don't want to do.
Jason,
I don't have time.
I'm trying to put it out here this time.
It just came out of now. I thought after the fact. Oh, maybe now I see what you're trying to do. And I had
it's surprising.
maybe it would be better. It was a thing. Just like thinking about.
It's surprising. She had brought it up to me. I walked in and heard it.
Oh,
And I'll take a look at it.
oh, it's not lost.
Still hadn't quite gotten
I still down. You know, I was like formally with the cities they brought them together. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Oh, right. Because I said, yeah, the worst that I think.
So like this week, or like my first sheet, you know, it's just like
My first thought was like, oh, I did.
right.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah. Look, I told Dibby your problem.
Yeah.
get started. We have a number of bills. We're not doing them in the order that's on the sheet, but we are going to do them in order. First, we're going to take up Senate Bill 541, Senator Oakenshade's bill, and Senate Bill 952, Senator Stewart's bill. Both of those have Woodrum impacts. There are two that were sent to us from the courts committee that were not with the subcommittee last week when we took up, I believe it was 17 or 18 bills thereabouts that have Woodrum impacts, and all of them are not still with us.
Just
So,
don't ask me to make the motion on my own.
we won't ask you to make the motion. So these are, again, Woodrum impacts, and the subcommittee has made the pretty consistent decision not to fund any new offenses, so we could continue to keep the resources to deal with things like salaries for sheriff's deputies and for state troopers, infrastructure that we have already committed to before we create new offenses. So is there, so Hal, are you moving that we recommend not reporting Senate Bills 952 and 541 because of the Woodrum impact?
Yes, I am.
That motion, the motion is that Senate Bill 952 and 541 not be reported due to Woodrum impact. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, that motion is agreed to. Next, we have three bills that are in somewhat of a similar status. They are Senator Peake's Bill 334, dealing with expungement, my bill, Senate Bill 403, dealing with expungement, and Senator Norman's Bill 954, which has a component that deals with expungement. As we looked at this, there is still some substantive question about what is the cost for those expungements. Just to refresh the subcommittee's recollection, Senator Peake's bill deals with possession of alcohol and fake IDs, but the items of
Just alcohol.
it does do, 401, 305 also has the IDs and use of possession of alcohol. So but it is the most limited of bills, of the three bills. So that's 334, possession of alcohol and related offenses out of Code Section 4.1305. My bill, Senate Bill 403, deals with the same bills that Senator Peake's does, in addition to possession of marijuana, that those can be expunged if you're less than 21 years of age when the offense occurred, which has to be for possession of alcohol. And then Senator Norman's bill deals exclusively with possession of marijuana and the ability to expunge under possession or possession of marijuana, and creates a different penalty structure for possession of marijuana. So our recommendation to the subcommittee is, we're not yet quite sure how much, if anything, these are going to cost, because of the state police is working through new infrastructure on their IT side, and as they build out that infrastructure, how much is that going to cost, is if anything, and we are yet not clear on how many additional expungements and what that cost would be. So our recommendation is that we put the clause on each of these and send them forward, so that we can continue these discussions. Senator Peake, in reference to your 334.
Mr. Chairman, I am making an amendment to my bill in Part L so that the costs are not returned to the petitioner. For normal expungements, and I think Senator Norman has part of this in his bill, so that if you normal expungements, you pay your filing costs, and if they grant it, you're refunded your filing costs. Under my bill, if you file it for alcohol, you will not be refunded your filing costs.
Charles, did you receive those amendments?
We talked about this morning, so.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay, so we're just gonna add that to help with the financial impact. So
Okay,
I'm asking for that substitution.
Does the, Senator Norman, Charles, do you know if Senator Norman's bill includes that language?
It does.
Why don't we do this? Senator Norman.
I had a brief conversation with Senator McDougal yesterday. I'm gonna take the marijuana bill so that the administrative costs are gonna be absorbed out of the lines and cost. So maybe we ought to look up those three bills and see if we can figure some way, so we don't duplicate the financial impact from state police. Because all of them are a required database.
So Norman, I think that that's a good idea. So why don't, Charles, clearly we're gonna take this up at full committee shortly. Why don't you, if you could work up a amendment that would make those provisions not returning the cost and any, additional fines and fees go to back to the state police for this, for all three of these bills. And so that even though they'll be separate in their concept of what you could expunge, the mechanisms of funding will be the same for all three. Is that, okay? Is Senator Norman?
And you might check with the state police, and I don't think any of us are trying to put an onerous burden on them, but the way the physical impact statements were suggested independently of each bill, there ought to be some critical mass that they can reach without having to pull FTEs on each of the bills. Besides, we gave them a lot of money last year, I know they can do that.
And there's 10 new positions in the budget. I'm sure we can work out something as introduced. All right, is everybody comfortable with that position? So we'll send 3 to recommend reporting to the full committee. Conceptually, 3 different expungements: 1 just possession of alcohol, 1 possession of alcohol and marijuana, and 1 changing the structure for marijuana and all marijuana offenses with the same fee structure at the back end and non-returning of expungement of that fee. Got it?
Got it.
Everybody okay with that? Sooner, somebody would like to make a motion to that effect on Senate Bills 334, 403, and 954. Motion is that we recommend reporting as amended Senate Bill 334, 403, and 954 with the financial amendment and the clause. All in favor of that, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign, and that is agreed to. Senator Chase, Senate Bill 715. This one draw committee members' recollection to Senate Bill 715. This is carrying a concealed handgun for firefighters and EMS providers. As we went back through, there is no FIS that has been filed with this bill. Caitlin did some pretty extensive research on this and all the bills here today, and you cannot ascertain that there would really be any fiscal impact. So my recommendation to the subcommittee is that we just recommend reporting with no additional action. Motion is that Senate Bill 715, because it does not have any fiscal impact, we recommend reporting as it came to the subcommittee. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign, and that motion is agreed to. Then we have Senator Obenshane's 565, Senator McPike's 664. Draw the committee's recollection to those bills. These are 2 conceptually, they're in the same arena, even though they address situations differently. Senate Bill 565 requires a DNA sample to be taken upon conviction for certain misdemeanor offenses. For members' recollection of where we are statutorily now, if you are convicted of a felony, a DNA sample is taken. If you are charged with a violent felony, a DNA sample is taken. Violent felony includes rape, robbery, murder, arson, many of the malicious wounding, aggravated wounding, many of the sexual assault offenses, and breaking and entering. We added in a limited number of misdemeanor offenses a couple of years ago, and this expands that number. I think Senator Obenshain, this one came after conversations through the crime commission as well. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this was a unanimous recommendation of the Crime Commission, and it was based on the same methodology that we used in 2015 to come up with the list, not just random list, but predictive list of misdemeanors, and it does have a fiscal impact. I think we walked out of the Crime Commission leaving or feeling like there was a strong likelihood that this could be covered within the current appropriated funds, and that's turned out not to be the case. And I've got actually a list of options based on if we used all 7 of the recommended misdemeanor offenses, that would cost $664,000, and we could trim it all the way down to the 2 top scoring, I think the 2 top scoring misdemeanors, which would bring the cost down to $44,000.
It's, regardless if it moves forward, it's gonna have the clause on it.
I understand.
So would you like it to move forward as it is with the clause, and then that lets you
I'd love it to
continue
move
to have
forward as it is with the
the
clause.
conversation? We're not, this committee doesn't discuss the policy piece, which is probably where I have some concerns, and what the overlap is between individuals charged with these misdemeanor offenses and felony offenses, and how many people were actually taken up. But the money, regardless, is gonna have some impact. So the recommendation would be that we have the clause.
We will allay your concerns, Mr. Mayor.
Well, very good. And then, so the motion is on Senate Bill 565 that we add the contingency clause. All in favor of that, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. That motion is agreed to. And Senator Obenchain moves that the bill be recommended for reporting with the clause. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. That is reported. Senator McPike, Senate Bill 644 is in the same stylistic DNA sample arena, but it is at the time of arrest for certain misdemeanors. So this one also has a fiscal impact, albeit less because the number of offenses. The policy decision that's not one for this committee to take up is whether moving to the time of arrest a misdemeanor crosses a pretty substantive Rubicon, because right now it's only violent offenses at the time of arrest that you have a DNA sample taken for, but if this is to move forward, it's going to need the clause.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the updated fiscal impact has an updated information from the Department of Forensics, as well as Crime Commission indicates that this would apply to roughly 300 samples at a cost of $31 a sample, so $9,000. And the staff impact can be absorbed based on the fairly low number of threshold limit.
No, it cannot be absorbed, so that is not accurate information. So if you might be
reading through the fiscal impact
well,
statement.
I have 300 in my practice.
So if this is to move forward, it's going to have the contingency clause. It'll have to be funded. The additional thing that you may not be aware of, but we've had a number of discussions, is the number of additional analysts Department of Forensic Science needs just to maintain some level. The backlog is ever increasing, so we cannot be adding additional responsibilities to the department and not add additional revenue and keep that what they're doing today at where it is. We are getting multiple complaints from Commonwealth's attorneys, defense attorneys, and judges because of the more, I think, complicated nature of analysis now, not just on the DNA side, but certainly on the regular analysis side. It is becoming more dangerous and more time consuming to do a single sample test than what it did even 12 months ago. And that backlog is increasing. I think with the number of additional positions we are funding, we are still likely going to be falling behind and not be able to keep up. So any additional responsibilities will cost more money. So for this to move forward, it will need the contingency clause. motion is that the clause be added to Senate Bill 644. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. The clause is added. Is there any additional motions? Somebody's got to move something. We need an additional motion. Motion is that recommend reporting Senate Bill 644 with the clause. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. All right, 2. Okay. 4 to 2. Recommend reporting with clause. All right, Senator Peak, Senate Bill 350. And then Senator Black's Senate Bill 48. Senator Peak, I don't know that you presented this bill before, but Senator Black has been with us on multiple years. Both of these deal with concealed handgun permit and eligibility, or for in regards to Senator Black's bill to carry openly, which even though some of us very strongly believe in the policy, the challenge is the financial impact, and it's pretty substantive. It's over $500,000 in general fund revenue and over $5 million in local revenue. We don't have to account for the local revenue in our budget, but we do have to account for the general fund revenue. Senator Peak's bill deals with the expiration date of the permit. That delays the impact, but then has an ongoing impact from that point. It's outside the budget cycle, but this committee has taken a pretty strong direction that if we're going to take an action like that, then we're gonna find the resources. We're not just gonna kick the can down the street to do that. So my recommendation is that, particularly in this year where we have some very other substantive challenges, that we carry these bills over to see if we can't work on the funding after we deal with the big challenges surrounding the Medicaid expansion that's been placed in the budget and how we're going to address that, and would leave the opportunity for us to continue to look at these bills over the summer as we deal with those financial challenges. So, but I know people have very strong positions on this, as do I personally, but the funding is something that we're gonna have a challenge with going forward. So it's either you would get the clause, and it's highly unlikely that we would fund either of these in the budget this year, or we carry it over and continue to have the discussion as we work through those budget challenges.
Mr. Chairman, I'm still working on Senator Lucas and Senator Powell.
I like to have your proxy.
You're very persistent, Senator Black. There's no question about that.
And Mr. Chairman, I understand the situation we're in.
I think we would like to try to continue working on these concepts, and I think if we carried them over, it gives us a better opportunity to continue that conversation. If we just put the clause on and send it out, I don't see much way, looking at the other almost insurmountable at times obligations that we have to deal with, that we're gonna find the money in this budget. So long term, I think it'd probably be better if they were carried over if you want the policy in place. Mr. Chair, Senator Norman.
Just to remind everybody what they know, but to put a sharper point on it, we are not moving forward at an accelerated pace in preparing a budget. The Medicaid situation, as you know, is $421.7 million that the party governor embedded in the budget. And so the decision on that dramatically impacts every bill and every one of the 506 budget amendments that the members of the Senate put in. And so what Senator McDougal is saying on these bills is some of we put the clause on, and depending on the decisions that are made on the budget may get funded. Some of them are just not ready for prime time. But the 421.7 billion is only the beginning of the issue. And there'll have to be, if we don't do the Medicaid expansion, there'll have to be other cuts. And there's some mandatory things like re-benchmarking, Medicaid reimbursements, increased the federal level. So none of us should have a false expectation at this point.
I just wanted to confirm that the chairman did think this was an excellent bill, however.
All your bills are excellent on Senator Pete. I confirmed that with the chairman earlier today. So Norman moves, Senator Howell seconds that we recommend carrying over for the year Senate Bill 48 and 350 because of the fiscal impacts. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That, 2 noes. Recommend that action to the committee. All right, leaves us 2 others. One is Senate Bill 402, dealing with transdermal, dealing with driver's license and restrict the license. And Charles, we have 2 things. One, we have a substitute from Charles.
So
Pass that
pretty
on,
much
please.
just admitted that we
And
need to
we,
go back next year and radically
Senator Norman
lower.
moves that we adopt the substitute. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We worked, 2 things we did, and Caitlin, do you mind passing out the JLR? 2 things we did. One is, many of the committee members are probably aware, we have the ability, if you get a fiscal impact statement, to have JLARC look at those and confirm that. Fiscal impact statement on this one seemed to be creative in its thought process of how you got to a fiscal impact. JLARC came to a different conclusion, that there was no fiscal impact. But as we were working through, and you have that document in front of you, but as we were working through the process, Charles called in some expert practitioners from the field and worked through a number of things. One of those, and I think it's on lines 64 and following, made it clear in the language that if a person has ever previously been prohibited from driving under subsection B, meaning they'd had a conviction at any point in time, they are ineligible to use this section. And then on line, at the end of the bill, on lines, where are we at, Charles? 395 and to 398 made it clear that if you violate this section because you have a positive result for the for the additional monitoring device, that it's a class 1 misdemeanor conviction, not a class 1 misdemeanor conviction of the 18-2-272, which is after 3 of those convictions. On the 3rd conviction of that, it can be a felony. So we tried to 3 different ways to make sure that this has no fiscal impact, and it now has no fiscal impact. I'll tell the committee that this is not for the financial side, but there are some providers that have devices that are not transdermal alcohol devices, and if this bill continues to move through the process, those will be presented as options. And I think Senator Obenchain, when we were in front courts committee, that's more on the substantive side than the financial side, so we're not going to deal with it in finance, but that is something, just so the committee's aware of, that we're going to continue the conversation for going forward. So with that, we have no fiscal impact and look for a motion. Senator Norman.
Flirting with the policy issue, I think this is a good incremental movement, particularly considering the absence of a fiscal impact. But for a couple of years, there have been bills introduced that if in fact you have ignition interlock, you ought not have restricted driving permit. So maybe this is sort of an incremental movement in that way, but so I applaud you on that, sir.
We take our Solomon-esque responsibilities to split the baby very seriously, and try to do that on multiple occasions. So do I take that as a motion?
Yes, sir.
So the motion is to recommend to the full committee Senate Bill 402 in the nature of substitute with no fiscal impact be reported. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign, and that motion is agreed to. Then there was one, Senator Stanley. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, sir. It's good to see you. Got a little tiny bill here.
Tell us about this bill that's about to go up in smoke.
You were much nicer, Senator Peake.
We liked him better. So, the draw members' attention to Senate Bill 173. This is Senator Stanley's bill dealing with consumer fireworks, their regulation sale. Of course, there's a policy decision that's not what we're focusing on in this, but there is a fiscal impact. That fiscal impact, according to the FIS as we've been given it, is potentially positive to the general fund of 1.3 million and a little over $500,000 in 19 locally and 1.6 locally. There's been some conversation, and Caitlin has probably dealt with this bill more so than she would have liked to, because there's lots of different thought processes on how this would impact sales of other types of fireworks that are currently legal in Virginia, and so whether that would reduce revenue or not. We were not able to substantiate one way or the other. I'm not saying it's not true, not saying it is true. We just can't give the committee any firm indication one way or the other. So, Senator Stanley, if you could take about a minute or so and shortly and concisely articulate to the committee why you think this is a good idea.
That's impossible, Mr. Chairman. But I'll give it a good shot.
We can just vote.
Well, basically, this allows Class A fireworks, a higher grade fireworks than we have right now. Right now, we have novelty fireworks, sparklers, fountains, snakes, non-aerials. This allows for aerial fireworks to be sold in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Currently, it's in West Virginia. Every state except North Carolina and Maryland that border Virginia allow aerial fireworks.
Are there any other states besides North Carolina, Maryland, and West Virginia that border Virginia?
Tennessee.
Tennessee does have.
Southwest Virginia borders Virginia.
Southwest
South side
Eastern
Virginia.
Shore.
And so, basically, this bill would allow for that to occur, and certainly would, the biggest thing that it places on, it has some prohibitions, has some safety in there. It's for a bricks and mortar type operation. Biggest concern, of course, for some counties is that they may not want these, and they have the right to opt out and not permit these type of aerial fireworks to be purchased, sold, or utilized in those counties that determine it be opt out. The main part of this is actually it has a 7% fund fee. The fund fee added on top of all state and local taxes for those counties that have opted in and allow the purchase, sale, or use of fireworks. That fee would be collected by the state and would go to the sheriff's departments. Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, right now we have sheriffs in my area and other rural areas that, quite frankly, their deputies the attrition rate is 19% per year. We're losing deputies to driving log trucks and working across the border in North Carolina because the pay is not as good as a sheriff as it is somewhere else. And so I can even tell you that in one of my counties that I represent, we have deputy sheriffs that, with the number of children and their family number, that they are eligible for public assistance for food stamps. Our sheriffs are the most noblest, hardest working, loyal Virginians we have. They work very hard for us, and quite frankly, we're looking at this as trying to create a new revenue stream, especially in these times when our revenues are tight, to make sure that we're funding our sheriffs properly. And those counties that would opt in, because there would be a number of counties that opt out, the 7% fee would probably be between 5.3 and 6. Would be at a minimum if every county went in 2%, but more likely it would be a quite more substantial yearly revenue generator that would then go directly to the sheriffs. That would be an increase of 3, 4, 5%. And another part of this bill has in it, as what I've also found is in our localities, in some of the localities that I represent, we go out of here and we give the sheriffs a 2 or 3% raise, and we think we're great, and I go to our deputies and say, congratulations on your raise, and what's happened is the county has then subsumed that raise and reduced their supplement by that amount, or cut it in half, or what have you. So our sheriffs end up getting nothing at all when we're trying to do something for them. In this bill, that prohibits this from reducing any supplement to the county. So any money generated by this could not be offset by a reduction by the county on the supplement, and that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Two questions on the physical piece of this, just to make sure we're all clear. Right now, the non-Class A fireworks can be sold at multiple, throughout the Commonwealth in multiple jurisdictions, but they don't have to have a physical bricks and mortar structure. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, that is accurate. This requires aerial fireworks to be sold only in bricks and mortar, not at tents or not at fly-by-night, parking lot kind of sales. Those bricks and mortars would probably sell the non-aerial fireworks alongside the aerial fireworks. So those, one would anticipate that there would be more outlets where the non-aerials would be sold. The bricks and mortar, I think, is a safer way to go about this. Not only that, we have our sheriff's departments in the opt-in counties doing the inspections and the licensing and the like. And so they would be working for what we're trying to do and give them the raise that they need.
And the resources from this fund that would be created, is that distributed back under the bill just to the jurisdictions that opt in, or all jurisdictions?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what this has is that the fund that would be created from the 7% fund fee, it's not a tax, it's a fund fee, would be distributed equally to all the counties that had opted in, to be distributed equally. So that way, those that had opted in would be able to derive the benefit from the fee that was derived. Now, I will say, Mr. Chairman, that other similar fees are attached to these aerial fireworks. West Virginia has a 13% fee, which it uses for the benefit of state veterans, building a state veterans hospital. So this is not uncommon. In my research and investigation, I did go to a West Virginia fireworks thing for investigation purposes only, and saw a number. In fact, I went into the parking lot, and not counting my license plate, I counted 26 Virginia license plates right there, and that was in the northern part of the state.
All right, does any member have any questions for Senator Stanley? So I know that there are a number of people that are here to support or not support. We're not going to give you the opportunity to make a lengthy pitch, but if you want to come forward and tell us what organization you're with and who you are and whether you support or don't support, we're happy to hear from you. So all the people who supported, if you line up, because we're going to move quickly. Mr. Jones.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I'm John Jones, representing the sheriffs. I think, first of all, I want to thank you. If you recall, back in October, you held a meeting of this subcommittee and heard our presentation on the plight that the deputy sheriffs are in. At that time, it was like an 18 or 19% turnover. Morale is low. We hire folks and train them to DCJS. They immediately leave and go to other agencies. Not much has changed since that meeting. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the sheriffs. I would say the sheriffs have looked at this bill and they voted for it. And they know what their role is. They're currently dealing with fireworks. We all know folks go to other states and bring these fireworks back. We're dealing with something much more than fireworks. It's the tenor-night issue. We're already dealing with it. It's much more explosive than the rockets and so forth and the fireworks. In preparing for this, I called my counterpart in South Carolina, the executive director of the Sheriff's Association, and said, listen, tell me, what is the deal with the sheriffs enforcing fireworks in South Carolina? And he said to me, fireworks has been a part of South Carolina's culture for many, many years, and I can't think of any major issue we encounter in the law enforcement world. So in Virginia, we're pretty much already doing it. It is optional. If the localities don't want to participate, they don't have to. I've heard from sheriffs all over. Sheriff Gardner in Carroll County is in favor of it. He's getting them now from states south of him. I've heard from Sheriff Stolley in Virginia Beach. He is in favor of the deal. So it doesn't generate a ton of money, but it's a great beginning for each 1%.
Senator Norman.
Yes, sir.
Not all sheriff's departments are active in law enforcement, are they?
Only 86 of the 123 primary law enforcement.
So there are sheriff's departments that don't have primary responsibility for doing offenses related to fireworks.
The sheriffs in those cities and counties with police have law enforcement authority.
I understand that.
And under this bill, they would have a role.
All right, I think I was a little too generous in what I was articulating as time frame. I want the individuals who supported to thank you, Mr. Jones, for your comments on behalf of the Sheriff's Association. If you could come forward, we're going to do this, and so I'm gonna give the others, if there's one person on the opponent side who wants to take a minute to articulate their reason why, but those others in favor of the bill, if you would just come forward and tell us who you are and what you, that you supported. Anybody else? Okay. You have one back up there, so understand.
Well, they're all in school right now.
I'm sorry.
I have one.
Well, let's hear from the opponents and then we'll get to your technical question. So those individuals who are opposed, one person has a minute and then everybody else tells who you are. Come to the middle so we can see you.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. My name is Mike Riley. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Department of Fire Programs. I'm here to let you know that the Governor, Secretary Moran, who's the Secretary of Homeland Security and Public Safety, Office of the Fire Marshal, we all oppose this bill. In fact, if I have the room stand up that are members of the Fire Service, every stakeholder group within the Fire Service, as well as the Office of EMS, as well as VML, oppose this bill. We have sympathy for our brothers that are sheriffs and public safety, and we support them in every manner. But we believe that we're just trading the good for the bad here. The number of increase of calls that will occur in the Commonwealth will be insurmountable. The amount of money that they've projected, we believe, is highly overrated. Iowa legalized fireworks, and they only sold it for 71 days during that period. Their injuries to the citizens went up more than doubled, but more importantly, their hospital stays and needs for surgical intervention went from 20% to 57%. This bill will allow fireworks to be sold every day of the year, and theirs was only being sold for 70%. So those caustic injuries, insurmountable amount of money. How can you really replace or put a value on young man or young woman's hands? So I urge you not to pass this bill.
Thank you, and appreciate the fact that Governor Northam is willing to weigh in on a bill at this stage of the game. That was not something we saw from the last administration. So thank you for picking a side. Come on down and tell us your name and speeches are done. So we just want to know who you are and whether you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Brian McGraw, the Virginia State Fire Marshal. I work for Chief Riley, and obviously my office also opposes this bill. There are a number of technical reasons we can go into if you would like to query us.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Keith Brower. I'm the Fire Chief in Loudoun County. I'm also representing the interests of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors and the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association in opposition to this bill.
Thank you for taking the time to come and see us.
Good morning, firefighter.
Good morning. Chris Legault for Charlotte Property Casualty Insurance Association and Nationwide Insurance, and they're all very concerned about this bill and very opposed to it.
Thank you.
Glenn Dean, a retired fire marshal who just simply has a lifelong interest in this subject.
Thank you. Where are you from?
I reside in Colonial Heights.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. My name is Deidre Peterson with the Virginia Beach Fire Marshal's Office, Assistant Fire Marshal. And I'm just here to let you all know that we also oppose this.
Thank you for being with us.
Bob Mathias from the city of Virginia Beach. The administration certainly opposes it, and we support our fire marshal.
Thank you.
Good morning, Morgan Wayland, City of North Edge, we also oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Ross Scribe, Virginians for Fireworks Safety, we also oppose the bill.
Who?
Virginians for Fireworks Safety.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
CJ Sally on behalf of the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, we oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. David Skiles with the Vector Corporation representing T&T Fireworks. We are a fireworks distributor. Our concern with the legislation is it will create a complex and uncertain regulatory regime, and for those purposes, we oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Nikki Zamosny, Assistant Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and the administration opposes the bill.
Thank you, Nikki. All right,
Mr. Chairman,
hold on. Senator Carrico had a technical question. Senator Carrico.
It's creating.
Can you talk into the mic just so we can show everybody?
So I see that it's creating the fund that will be redistributed to the localities. What guarantee do they have when it goes back to the localities that they will spend it on? Do we have any language that says they have to do
Mr. Chairman, Lisa, do you know, this is an issue that we've struggled with over the years in other areas.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at lines 276 through 280 of the bill on page 5, it says that the locality shall use the distribution to supplement, and it says that they shall have a maintenance of effort of what they're currently providing in fiscal year 28.
All right, so committee has heard from a lot of people very interested. 30 seconds, Mr. Senator State.
Well, you know, this is about freedom in America and bald eagles, but,
They will be bald after
but if we look at the injuries, if we look at the injuries in the United States, just even in comparison to where fireworks injuries have fallen, 31 million Americans sustain non-fatal injuries. Just that 99.96 were non-fireworks related, 12,000 in the whole United States. More people were injured. We talk about baseball, hot dogs, and apple pie. More people were injured in grill and fire pit accidents, ranges and ovens cooking that apple pie. We had over 120,000 injuries in baseball. We don't outlaw bats. We don't outlaw pie pans. And we don't outlaw Weber grills. And there's a reason for that, because we're Americans. So I thank you for your time and your consideration. But this really is about the sheriffs, and I think it shows and highlights a real issue that we're always struggling with, but we owe it to our law enforcement to be responsible and to pay them what they deserve.
Senator Norman.
Senator Stanley, one time, I really like cheese, except Swiss cheese, because there are a lot of perforations in it. And because there's an
We call them holes, actually. Perforate where I come from, they're holes.
well, you ain't a country boy like that. But because some localities, you don't have to participate in this, you've got that option provision. Tell me how it's going to benefit sheriffs and deputies as a whole, where one locality adopts it and can get this increase and other localities not. How is that going to prevent migration?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer Senator Norman by saying what it does, at least at the start, is to slow this migration and attrition rate down in those counties that have opted in. You know, the smaller the pool, the larger the pieces of pie that they're going to get. The larger the pool, of course, it spreads out. I think what you're going to find is the larger counties like Fairfax, Prince William, Loudoun will not opt in. But I can tell you right now, based on where I went in West Virginia and saw those tags and saw those tax stickers, they're going right back to those areas. What we're trying to do is benefit all of the sheriffs. But with this local option, at least we can benefit those that are taking the time not only to regulate the fireworks, but license them and control and make sure that they're properly used and properly dispensed.
Mr. Chairman, just based on the individuals that I heard express their opposition of the major population centers of Virginia, maybe it's a gross assumption on my part, but the major population centers are those that are going to tend to have more deputies.
Mr. Chairman, that's true.
And so, I know Sheriff Stolley may support it, but I just heard what, each fire marshal and city government's position is, and I don't know how many, he's got 800 deputies or something.
Mr. Chairman, if I may say to Senator Norman, in most of those higher populated areas, you're talking about a higher income level and also higher supplements from the counties. Where in my county, it maybe gives a 2% supplement, but if we give them a 3% raise, they take away that 2% supplement, and our deputies get a 1% raise. I know deputy sheriffs in Fairfax that are making 3 times what my sheriffs are making.
Senator Openshade.
Mr. Chairman, what occurs to me is that in some of those higher population areas, those are the areas where sheriff's offices typically don't perform the law enforcement functions, and but in places like where I live in rural Virginia, they do, and they are more likely to approve this, and they have more need to provide those supplements to the frontline officers who are protecting our citizens every day. And what I hear from my communities every day is just give us more options for helping to provide for our law enforcement officers. And what I see this as is an option that's available for local government to take advantage of or not in trying to figure out how do we take care protecting our citizens every day. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether it's appropriate time, but I would move whenever it is to recommend reporting this fine bill.
Well, it is the appropriate time for a motion, so the motion is to report. We're gonna go Senator Norman and Senator Howe.
A substitute motion, Mr. Chairman. I think that there are some enormous uncertainties here, and perhaps the concept has some merit, but I think that we really need to take a close examination, on this thing, and I'm gonna move that we carry it over until the 2019 session.
Senator Howe?
I will second that motion. What we've been talking about is helping sheriffs, but at the cost of hurting kids, because that's what we're talking about. Kids are gonna get hurt by these. To me, it's just unconscionable to have that kind of a trade-off. I'm like appalled that if we're doing that, and we're hearing from all the experts in fire, who are saying, don't do it, and I think they're absolutely right.
So, we had the original motion was to report, substitute motion to carry the bill over for the year. I think we've heard a lot of discussion. I actually had a conversation with one of my rural sheriffs this morning, who indicated that in his jurisdiction, it's about 10,000 for the majority of the year, and on weekends in the summer, it's 35,000. So he almost triples in population. They will routinely get calls today from people setting off because fireworks of Class A style, or even more because of they get them from other places. But I do think that there is some concerns and a need for us to more carefully examine the structure. So with that, the committee will vote on the motion to carry over. All in favor of that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
3-3. Senator Stanley.
So you're saying I have a chance?
No. So we will indicate that the motion to carry over had a 3-3 tie, and that's it. So you might want to walk on downstairs.
Yeah, I'll see you in a little while. Thank you.
So thank the subcommittee. We want to thank Caitlin and Charles and Lisa for their work on this, and that subcommittee will rise.